The Plumley Podcast.
Fire tables.
Yeah.
Okay. How did they come about? How profitable have they been for you as a side hustle? I know we were talking a bit about this just before we started recording, but it kind of shows you're a bit of a jack of all trades, right?
Yeah,
So,
it was really interesting because we've been hearing it so much. COVID slowed a lot of stuff down. But one thing that I never felt really held back in was I'm a pretty creative guy. So always snap into new opportunities that can be my downfall as well, as I'll spread myself too thin. So I'm learning from that. But my good friend Kyle, we were doing business together as well. We started the conversation around, we're pretty handy guys in general. Let's make something really cool for our moms for Mother's Day. And so we, grabbed some coffee, sat on his couch, scrolling through Instagram, scrolling through Pinterest, and found these fire tables and like so many unique different designs from wood to metal and stuff. And we're like, that's it. So we got out a piece of paper, sketched something up real quick, ran over to Home Depot and banged out this fire table. And it was like the funniest thing ever because we didn't know what we were doing. We were literally just looked at a couple pictures, thought of a few detail changes that we would make to it. And, 3 days later, because Mother's Day was 3 days later, we had these two fire tables, and it was 100% handmade, man. The only thing that we did not buy pre-assembled was the regulator. So we built the burner, we literally bent, drilled, and forged together little metal tubing and built this burner and put it all together off of scraps from a barbecue. And presented this thing for our moms for Mother's Day, threw a couple pictures up on Facebook and Instagram, and almost instantly got a dozen messages. And people were like, wow, would you make one of those for us? And I was pretty taken back at first. I thought it was pretty cool, but I never would have considered turning it into something that I would sell. I just thought it was a cool DIY gift. Before the end of 30 days, we had sold 8 of them. It was nuts.
That's crazy.
So
in May?
So between May and June. So Mother's Day kind of falls at the end of May. So within about 30 days of Mother's Day, we had sold 8 of them. So it was nuts. So it turned into this side hustle, which at the time took up the space that the business normally would have had if shipping wasn't slowed down or communications.
So
or
due to
what have
COVID,
you.
it kind of slowed down. So
it gave us the ability to spend Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday doing this stuff, and then taking time out of the day for people to come pick it up or deliver some. Brought a couple of the first ones down to Calgary, coincidentally, and it turned into a 22 table summer. So we did 22 tables this summer. I just took over the main kind of go at it. Kyle's been really occupied with the new startup he's working on. But I just got another deposit yesterday, so people are still buying these things into the fall. It takes about 4 hours to build, and it's quite fun too. I love working with my hands. Maybe a little bit too much sometimes, but that's okay.
You guys did all the renovations for your office space that you had too, right? And was that kind of when you started to really come into your own in terms of being a handyman kind of guy?
So I've always been really hands-on as a person, from growing up building Legos and staying up at all hours of the night.
Legos, that's the foundation.
It is,
For any sort of creative entrepreneurism, I think. I'm going to actually start dedicating more podcast talk to why I think Lego builds character traits of an entrepreneur. But that's kind of another story.
I think it's true, man. When you get the ability to access that creativity in such a free-flowing state as a kid, it really sets a foundation that you don't realize you have until you can step into it. So you're right, when we were doing those office renos, there was time and time again where we were looking at ways to make cool stuff. We did about $40,000, probably $50,000 if you include even half the labor costs of us doing it ourselves, into renovating this worn down warehouse with a little bit of retail space in the front into a full functioning co-working office space.
It's a beautiful place, man.
It worked out pretty good, hey? But you saw as soon as you walk in, we had a reclaimed pallet wood wall. We did boxed light fixtures out of plain pallet wood. Again, being in the shipping and logistics industry, it's not something that we came across a few pallets, right? And then you step into the back and we had we built a concrete countertop sink out of a custom made from scratch cast that we literally built this framing system up and poured 2 before we got it right, and then rested this thing down, did a drop-in sink, and it was just cool to bring that creativity into a
Real
workspace,
life,
and then also to see people really take an appreciation for it to the extent of paying us monetarily for it, right? Like you're getting paid for your work and you're having fun doing it. It's a win-win, right?
Yeah. And on the subject of your office, we kind of talked about this when I was in Edmonton in about March. I believe you've moved out of there since, right?
Yeah, so we did the transition in May, which was unfortunate, but everything has its perfect place.
Yeah, and we were talking like you put all this time and money into the renovations of it. And you can look at that one of 2 ways, like, oh, it sucks for moving out of this place, was so perfect, did so much work into it. Or you can just look at it like, oh, I'm so proud of that. That was a fun opportunity.
Absolutely.
And it was all experience. Moving out of it is not like a sad thing. You're just moving forward, moving on, right?
I think it did more for us because in the time, it was like the best bonding agent for a team that you could really come by.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
So me being especially the newcomer into that industry, stepping into a partnership of 3 people, and trying to become the 4th, it was the make or break. Within the first 30 days, there was 5 people in total, 2 from one business, 3 from the other. Within 30 days, 1 from one business and 1 from the other dropped off because they couldn't take this much hands-on time. And you really see who's in it for the long haul when you can stare somebody in the face for 18 to 20 hours a day and go from a working relationship to a construction relationship when you actually are dealing with the stress of debris and busted thumbs and people stepping on nails or whatever it is, right? The cost of material, and it just created a really strong friendship and or business relationship out of the 3 that stuck through it all, right? Which is really cool to see.
So if you have a startup in mind, if you're creating a little office environment, creating a team, maybe you should look at building the actual physical office space, or just something together as a team to maybe not only to bond more, but to separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak, right? To see who really isn't going to be a fit long term in terms of like teamwork and just creative problem solving. There's so much involved in that, right? So
absolutely, and you see the best and worst of everybody, and it shows you where the longevity is, right? Because everybody's got faults, right? And you can't eliminate that from the conversation, but if you understand that somebody else's fault or weak moments and your fault or weak moment really butt heads, there's probably not a really long-term vision behind working together, right? You got to find people that really complement and mesh, which is how you operate.
Support each other. That makes a lot of sense, and just a totally cool experience, honestly. And I think we could do a whole session on just like handiwork and building stuff. And I was telling you about the planter box pots that I made out of pallets, but I think just if people are following me or you on social media, they're going to continue to see that kind of stuff and see the fruits of our labors. So we can maybe leave that conversation for another time, or just let the work speak for itself, and people can see what we're up to. But